Hi guys, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be talking about some of the books that Booktube made me read. Alright, so I have been watching Booktube videos for probably about 3 years or so now. I've been on Booktube for almost 2 years making videos myself. But I was kind of lurking and just watching videos for about a year or so before that. And I was introduced to some really good books. Books that I have really enjoyed. I can't really say that there are any bad books on this list actually. So without further ado, we're gonna jump straight into it. So I have 10 books on this list of books that I have read in the past few years that have been because everyone on Booktube has been talking about them. So the first one is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. This one's pretty much a given because everyone, I think, has probably read this. I don't know anyone who hasn't read this. And these are books that I had never heard of until I joined Booktube. And I didn't think it would be something that I would enjoy because when I joined Booktube originally, I wasn't really reading a lot of young adult fantasy anymore. I'd kind of gone past that genre, or so I thought. So yeah, I didn't really think that I was going to enjoy it, so I didn't pick it up for quite a while. But the more I kept seeing it, the more I became interested. And in November 2019, I picked it up for the first time. I actually did a vlog on my first reading of this book, which I will link somewhere if you still want to watch it. But yeah, I read it and I actually really enjoyed it. So I have now read the other 2 books in the series, and I really liked all of them. It's such a great story, and I'm very excited for the show, obviously. I don't know anyone who isn't. So yeah, this is probably one of the most obvious books on this list. I think that Booktube has encouraged a lot of people to pick these books up and read the series, and rightly so, because it definitely deserves the attention. So the second book on this list is Scythe by Neil Shusterman, and again, this is the first book in the Arc of a Scythe series. I love this series. It's one of the best young adult dystopian fantasies that I have ever read in my life. Not that I've read many, but this entire series is so consistently good throughout that it's very difficult to find faults with it, in my opinion. I have seen some people who don't like this book, and that is fair enough, but for me, it is just absolutely amazing. The concept is so cool and very dark actually for young adult. I wasn't expecting it to be as dark as it was going into it, but this is another book where I had heard of it before joining Booktube, but I didn't really feel compelled to pick it up. It was very popular during the summer of 2019, probably early 2019 actually, and a lot of people were talking about it. A lot of Booktubers that I were watching were talking about this book, and the more I started to hear about it and the more I learned about the concept, the more I was like, okay, I really want to read this. No, it was probably end of 2018 actually when this was being talked about a lot, because I actually got this book for Christmas 2018 and I read it early 2019, so ignore what I just said. But yeah, this book was really good, and I read I think I read the first 200 pages of this book in one day. It really had me hooked, and I don't really know why I didn't think I would like it. Again, I think it's just because it was young adult fantasy, and also I didn't really like the cover at the time. Now I really like the cover, but at the time it just wasn't really doing anything for me. But this is proof that you should never judge a book by its cover, because this one was really good. So read this series if you haven't. There's a PSA. Number 3 is Red, White and Royal Blue. So this is actually a very recent read for me. I read this back in March. And I don't really know why I didn't pick it up sooner, because it is definitely a book that I would have enjoyed. Obviously I enjoyed it. I gave this book 4 stars. It was really, really good. But this is a book that's been out for ages. And I kind of read this because I had massive FOMO. I didn't not read it because I didn't want to read it, or because I didn't think it was not my thing, or it wasn't going to interest me, because it obviously did. I just, I've just had so many books on my TBR that I never really got around to it. But yeah, I started to get massive FOMO from not reading this book, because it's a very popular book. People love it, and there are so many people that I follow on social medias that love this book and talk about it constantly. And I just wanted to know. I felt like I had to. So in March I read it and it was great. But this is one of those cases, where I was definitely scared of missing out. I didn't want to not know anymore. So I wasn't really pressured or anything into reading this. I just kind of did it in the end. But this is one that has definitely been influenced by Booktube and by, the other social medias that I have. So the next one is another recent read for me, and that is The Honeymooners by Christina Lauren. I don't really know why I hadn't read any Christina Lauren until this year, because this book was really good. I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't know that Christina Lauren was an author duo until quite recently. And I don't know, romance is very hit and miss for me. I do like romance, but it has to be written well, and it has to have, really interesting characters. I am quite picky with the romance that I read, but I finally bit the bullet with this one, and I read it in February, and it was exactly what I needed at the time, and it was really surprising. It was written really well, and I loved the characters, I loved the story, I loved the setting. I just really, really enjoyed this one. But this is another book that I have seen everywhere on Booktube. A lot of the Booktubers that I watch read a lot of romance and contemporaries, which is kind of funny because I don't read a lot of contemporaries. That's not my favourite genre to read, and I dip in and out of romance. I read more thrillers and stuff, but I watch Booktubers that don't read thrillers. But there we go. So this is another one that was just influenced by Booktube. But again, these Booktubers, they know their stuff. They're very good at giving really good book recommendations. So number 5 is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So my decision to read this book wasn't only influenced by Booktube. It was influenced by people on Twitter and Instagram as well. I remember when this book first came out and there was so much hype surrounding it, and it was another situation where I had massive FOMO, and I didn't want to not be on the bandwagon, if that made sense. So I definitely read this one because I felt like I had to. I actually listened to the audiobook for this on the way back from Cornwall back in 2019, so that would have been May time. It was a 6-hour long drive, and but anyway, and the audiobook is definitely the way to go with this book, I think, because of the format that it's written in. It's written in interview style format, and I know that format isn't for everybody. I mean, I haven't read the physical book, so I can't comment on whether it's for me or not personally, but the audiobook really, really worked. And this was one of the best books I read in 2019. Just really, really enjoyed it. Great cast of characters, really cool story. And it was my first endeavour into Taylor Jenkins Reid's work. My only endeavour, actually, because I do have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo on Audible, and I still haven't got to that, and I've been saying I'm going to read it for years. So there we go. Next we have The Passengers by John Mars. So I had never heard of this book until I saw Gabby over at Gabby Reads talk about this book. I said earlier that I don't watch any booktubers that read thrillers. I lie, I do. Gabby reads a lot of thrillers. So I trust a lot of what she says about books because we do have very similar reading tastes. And yeah, this book is amazing. I haven't seen it on Booktube that much. It's one of those books that I wouldn't say it's eluded people, but it's just like a lot of the booktubers that I watch, as I have said, read a lot of fantasy and contemporary and romances and things like that. So I don't see it around as much, but I definitely picked this one up because of Gabby's review of it. And yeah, like I have read a few of John Miles's books now, and he is quickly becoming one of my favourite authors. Like, I feel like he can do no wrong. He is absolutely insane with his plots and the cliffhangers and everything, and this book is a good example of that. Like, every chapter ends on a cliffhanger, and it's one of those books where you're like, oh, I'll just read one more chapter and then I'll go to bed, and then like 3 hours later you're still reading it because he leaves every chapter on a cliffhanger and you just have to know what happens next. So this is a great book. Like, it's one of my favourites of 2020 for sure. Number 7 is Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. So another recent read for me. And I've seen these books floating around on, not just on Booktube, but on Bookstagram, quite a lot in the past. And I knew that they were middle grade, which is why I never picked them up, because I wasn't really interested in middle grade. But when I was doing the I can't remember the name of it, Fortnight Frights, there we go. When I was doing the Fortnight Frights readathon over Halloween last year, I ended up choosing Every Heart a Doorway for one of the prompts because I realised, I learned that it was dark fantasy. I was like, this is crazy. Like, I thought this was middle grade, but it turns out it's still kind of middle grade, but it's dark fantasy as well. And this ended up being one of my favourite books of 2020. So good. So good. The other books that I've read in this series, so good. Like, I can't fault them. They're just magical and they're written like a fairy tale and everything about them just work. Also, great LGBTQ plus representation. Very diverse cast of characters. Like, just wow, really liked them. So yeah, I picked this one up mainly because of the prompt for Fortnight Frights, and that readathon was created by the artisan geek Deji, who has her own Booktube channel. All the Booktube channels I have mentioned I will link down there as well, just to give them a bit of love. But yeah, I read this book because of that. The next one is Pine by Francine Toon. I was in two minds whether to include this one in this video or not, because I was actually more influenced by Bookstagram than I was by Booktube when it came to this book. But I have seen this book on Booktube a few times, but this one was definitely around a lot on Bookstagram last year. And the cover really appealed to me. I love the cover. Absolutely gorgeous cover. The book didn't turn out to be the best book in the end. It was a 3-star. Not that a 3-star is a bad review, and it just wasn't what I hoped it would be. But yeah, I was influenced by Bookstagram for this one. Because a lot of people were hyping it up, were saying that it was really good, kind of describing it as a gothic horror, which I can kind of see, but it's not quite a gothic horror in my opinion. But I'm not an expert, so don't listen to what I say. But also because this book just looks absolutely fantastic in photographs, and I wanted a picture of it on my Bookstagram feed. I know that's really materialistic, but there we go. The second to last book that I'm going to talk about is This Monstrous Thing by Mackenzie Lee. I was actually trying to get hold of A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue initially, but I couldn't get hold of that book. So I ended up picking up this one instead. A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue has been everywhere on Booktube. It was in pretty much all of the Booktubers videos I was watching around like the start of 2019, probably a little bit earlier. And I really wanted to read it, but yeah, I couldn't get hold of it from my library. I have it on audiobook now, but at the time when I was just first like starting out on my reading journey and I didn't have a lot of money, but I ended up reading this one at like October, November time in 2019, and I really, really liked it. This is a Frankenstein retelling, and yeah, it was very unique. It was a lot of fun. I haven't seen this book on Booktube that much, only a couple of times, but it was mainly because I recognised the author's name and because the author was quite popular on Booktube at the time that I went for this one. Alright, and the last book is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. So I actually unhauled this book quite recently. I have no plans to continue with the series. I can't really say that I didn't enjoy this book when I read it, because I did, but it just wasn't really for me, unfortunately. But I know that people really enjoy it, and this is another one that I have seen on a lot of fantasy booktube channels, and a lot of bookstagrams where people read predominantly fantasy. Like the hardbacks of these series are always like centre stage of photos. They do look great in photos, I'm not gonna lie. And again, this was another book that I had received for Christmas 2019 because I had just, you know, that was the time when I was watching Booktube and getting book recommendations and seeing all these cool new books and yeah, stuff like that. So this one was definitely influenced by Booktube. It's just a shame that it didn't work out for me in the end. Alright guys, so that is the end of this list, and those are all the books that Booktube made me read. I had a lot of fun with this video, and it was nice to look back on some of the past books that I have read that I maybe haven't talked about on my channel that much. Yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. As always, I would love to hear what you have to say. Please leave a cheeky thumbs up if you liked this video, and please subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos from me in the future, and I will see you all in my next video very soon. Bye guys.